Okay, this works, right? You can hear me? I can hear me? I always enjoy this part. It's nice. Okay, well first, now that I'm big, I want you to hear the part where we thank people, because what we've been doing for years, and for those of you who saw the movie, you know, it looks in some ways simple, in some ways complicated, in some ways scary, and in some ways, I think for some of you, it would actually be easy. In fact, probably easier than us. But one of the things that we always need, a small ingredient, but a necessary one, is a little bit of money to make it happen, to get somewhere, to travel somewhere. And it's things like this that actually make that possible. You know, we come to places like this and talk, or occasionally show a relic of one of our actions. And so we are very thankful to have participated here this week. It was an amazing workshop. The groups that we were working with were incredible and actually kind of blew our minds, because we've worked with a lot of NGOs who have been rather proprietary, you know, non-government organizations, who like to kind of keep their organization to themselves and not work on other issues because they have one issue to work on and they're all professionalized and they have a hierarchy and they have legal advisors who say no. And for some reason, we had a room full of people who all wanted to work on each other's issues. And anytime they went to get legal advice, it was like from each other. And they all said yes. So it was the first time, I think, in our history when we were in a room with organizations and they were actually pushing things further than we would go ourselves, and they were totally comfortable with that. So it was super fun. And I want to thank, for making that happen in particular, David White, who runs Agitprop. David, and who else? David, are you here?
Right here.
Oh yeah. And who else is in the Agitprop racket with you?
There's a lot of people, but primarily Megan Willis.
Megan Willis, yep, she was there too. Thank you, Megan. How do people get to Agitprop and plug in if they want to?
They can go to agitpropspace.org. There's contacts button there. You can press that and send me an email. And occasionally, if the door's open, you drive by on University in Utah. Just pop in. We're there working a lot.
It was great, amazing, compact space, the perfect space to work, and it's incredible to have these kinds of sort of alliances and collaborations between organizations too, because here we have the big museum working with the tiny cube that is Agitprop. But a lot of activist organizations that might otherwise never think they would walk into the museum and have a kind of workshop are totally comfortable walking in there. And then a lot of those people are here tonight. And I just want to give those people a huge round of applause, because they're totally amazing. So thank you, organizations. I mean, some of them were ASA or ASA, Americans with Safe Access, Canvas for a Cause, and a few other organizations. I'm not going to name them all because they have secret projects. All right. Also, I want to thank Brittany Solaris, who is handling the organization of this event and us. And then, of course, Alexander Jarman, who, you know. All right. Now I'm going to take my shoes off. And we're going to begin. For me, it's really great to be back here in San Diego. And I say back here in San Diego because I spent some formative years here. I was here from 1990, formative for me. I mean, not for the place, but I was here from 1993 until roughly 1997, 98. I got a degree here, a Master of Fine Arts degree, and there may even be people in the room that I know if I like search my memory banks and like look around the room. And in a lot of ways, I was just getting into the type of thing that we've been doing with the Yes Men for the last, well, decade as the Yes Men, 15 years, because for 5 years we collaborated. And so it seemed like a good place to go back and tell the origin story. Now, at any point tonight during which we are talking, you can ask a question, and we'll try to answer. And we like difficult questions, We don't like aggressive questions, but we encourage them. And we want a challenge here. Come on. I mean, in our daily lives, we have to like talk to Shell and, you know, people like that, Shell Oil, whatever, engage with the Wall Street Journal, and that kind of thing is often, we need practice, so help us. Help us. All right. Here, 1993, did anybody here work on the Barbie Liberation Organization project? Is there anybody here who worked on that? All right. I didn't email anyone. So good. I'll tell you fresh. Okay. I was going to school up here at UCSD. We did have the internet, very early days. There was a thing called Mosaic that you used to browse it. And when you typed in a URL, you'd wait for about 50 to 70 seconds for the site to load. But at that time, we used different methods than we use today. We were using press releases, video news releases, and theatrics and antics to get our messages in the news. And there was this thing that had happened where Mattel released a toy called Teen Talk Barbie was a talking Barbie doll. Now, for those of you who were around during the 60s, you may remember the introduction of the first talking toys, which had little record players in them. And you'd pull a string and then it would talk. But in 1991 or so, they came up with these digital storage chips, you know, and so they released a whole range of toys that talked. Once again, it became incredibly popular. Every company that had a popular toy like Barbie or G.I. Joe released a talking version of it. Press the button and the toy says something like "Dead men tell no lies" if it's a G.I. Joe. Or if it's a Barbie, it says things like "I love to shop with you." And at first, the Barbie was released with a phrase that insulted people. The Barbie said, "Math is hard." And so this was picked up pretty quickly by a bunch of feminist groups, and National Organization of Women lodged a protest, and Mattel said, okay, we're going to pull that phrase. But I thought it was so funny that this toy could talk that way, that it seemed like it could say any number of other things, and that might be fun. So I started doing a little research, and looking at how you can maybe record your own message for the toys, and insert it into the toy. And then I was sitting with my 90-year-old great aunt who's a Holocaust survivor, and she said, you know, it's really not the Barbie. There's nothing wrong with the Barbie. Who cares? I was like, what do you mean, who cares? She's kind of a feminist, you know. And she said, I don't care. Well, what about the G.I. Joe? And then I was like, oh yeah, of course. And sure enough, you could switch their voice boxes. And it made it really simple. It was just a binary kind of swap, and the G.I. Joe was really easy to put the Barbie guts into, but the Barbie was a little harder. You know, G.I. Joe's a lot bigger, so you had to do a little bit of electronics hacking, soldering, put it in there. And then working with a group of friends around the country, I asked them to send me the toys. They'd go into the toy store, buy the toy, I sent them money, and then I would do the surgery and very carefully put it back in the box, press it up again, and then give it back to them. I send it back, and then put it back on the store shelves. So that people would come home and, you know. Now, I arrived at grad school just after having gotten this in process here at UCSD. And I remember at the time I had to like use the pay phones and stuff. There was like before cell phones, and the plan was to send basically to send out a press release just before Christmas to let all of these journalists know that they should expect calls from people who had gotten these Barbies, these doctored or altered Barbies. And the press release took responsibility for the project as the Barbie Liberation Organization. There are no individuals behind it, of course. And then there was a little video that showed the Barbies actually operating on each other, like holding the soldering irons and doing the surgery. And so they got this video, and at the same time, there was actually a family here in San Diego who, and I was hoping maybe we'd see one of them here tonight. There was a kid called Zach Zellen, who was about 6 years old at the time. And now I guess he's like he's out of university. But this little boy, basically on the day of, his parents actually brought it home to him. And he opened it up and sort of played along when the media came to his house. So he had this kind of way to build in this sort of media attention and claim responsibility as a Barbie Liberation Organization. And the event blew up because it happened in San Diego and Albany, New York simultaneously, the two places where I was from. And when people started to then get them on the store shelves, they realized what was going on, and some people started looking for them. And it became a kind of national media event that in the end was about and was revealed in follow-up press releases as a commentary on both the war toys and the sort of sexism that was inherent in the Barbie toys. But it was less the sexism than the actual, this very strange thing that the toys themselves were like this closed loop of consumer culture. Because you buy one of those Barbies, and then each one of them, although they uttered only 4 phrases, there was always one phrase that told you to go buy something for the toy. So like, the kid gets the toy, and the toy says, "Let's go get some new clothes." You know, and the kid is then taking the toy. She's like, "Mom, I need to get new clothes for this toy. It's telling me to get new clothes." So that was really disturbing. And in a way, the success of that project is what has sort of like really propelled me to continue in this trajectory that I realized then, although I'd done some similar projects before on a local scale, this was a thing that pushed this momentary kind of oddball project into the national and international spotlight. It had heavy rotation on all the mainstream news, and so that's when I kind of felt like it was my calling, because as an individual or as a small group of people, you could have an impact and a voice that was well beyond or equal to that of a company like Mattel that had millions of dollars to work with in their budget. And about the same time,
2 years later, 1996, I was in San Francisco, and it was the height of ACT UP, and I was really inspired by that, all these people having an effect and changing government policy just by getting to the street and doing sometimes really funny shit. And I was also inspired by hearing about things like the BLO, which everybody heard about. There was an episode of The Simpsons dedicated to it. It was like it entered popular culture in a massive way. I had activist sentiments around various things, but I really didn't fit in. I didn't feel like I fit in exactly into any particular protest movement. But I tried to do what I could, and then meanwhile, I had to make a living. I was at the graduate school, fiction writer, and not making a lot of money at that. So turned out I could do computer programming. And I picked that up on the job by forging resumes and getting jobs that I couldn't do yet, and then I could do them. And I managed to somehow become a games programmer. And I found myself working actually on the first version of The Sims at a company then called Maxis in Walnut Creek. They were little stick figures that we were making run around on the screen, and it was our boss's weird idea of fun. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun making these little people. But then there was this other game that was under production, and it was a big moneymaker. It was called Simcopter, and it was going to be a simulation of helicopters flying around, and there would be a city that would be bombed and on fire, and you'd have to pick people up and drop them off, and it was really stupid. But I got drafted to that game, and I was drafted to kind of carry the little people into that game and make them run around in the city and fall off buildings and stuff. And okay, went along with it, had no choice. And simultaneously, my boyfriend broke up with me, and that was like a really bad moment in my life. I've been really attached, and I went through the usual heartbreak that one does when something like that happens. And this was like maybe a month before the game was scheduled to be released, and they wouldn't give me time off. So I had to figure out another way to get time off. And I figured that being fired would be a good way to do that. So I thought, well, what would be the funnest way to risk getting fired? I wasn't committed to necessarily being fired, but I definitely wanted to play with the possibility. So I was in charge of the little people. I was thinking a lot about guys. And I made all of the little people look like guys in swimsuits periodically. And just en masse start kissing each other. That seemed like a really good idea. And you know, if I couldn't have it in my life, I could at least have it on the screen. And so, as stupid as it sounds, it really was. So, you know, I programmed this feature that was supposed to happen every once in a really long time, but especially on my ex-boyfriend's birthday. There would be like 100 of these guys in swimsuits that would just swarm over the screen and start kissing each other, kissing each other, and, you know, making havoc, making gay havoc on the screen. And so, you know, the release date approached, and you know, I was soldiering on, doing my job, plus this feature, extra job. And the release date came, and you know, 50,000 copies got printed at the factory and shipped to store shelves. And the next morning, I got into work, and it turned out that my boss had been playing the game the night before with his 9-year-old daughter. And this feature that I had programmed really carefully to happen very rarely just happened. And I think it was because he got to the last level, and nobody else ever got to the last level. It was really hard, but he was very talented. So he got to the last level with his daughter, and suddenly the screen was filled with these swarming boys. And you know, he fired me. So it worked, you know, a little sooner than I had anticipated, and that was okay. And I went home, and I was thinking about what had happened, and I told a friend who happened to be a writer, Steve Silverman, for Wired magazine. I told him, yeah, I was just fired from my job as a computer programmer because I put gay bimbos into the game. And he said, wow, that's amazing. That's a really funny, weird story. Why'd you do it? And I said, I don't know. And he said, did it have anything to do with like gay content in video games? Yeah, it was that. So we wrote an article, you know, gay programmer gets fired for putting boy bimbos into video game, and put it on Wired.com, and it instantly, and it, you know, with some text in there about why I did it, supposedly. And that instantly became a big media story, and AP picked it up, and then it was on TV all over the place, and suddenly, like, I was kind of a minor, little weird, accidental celebrity, and I had to, you know, then make sense of it and say, yes, it was because of not enough gay content in video games, you know, macho, this and that. And you know, that was okay, live and learn. And I also really enjoyed the attention. It was fun to be on TV, and fun to talk to reporters about this, and fun also to craft this activist message, albeit late. And when the attention inevitably died down, I was kind of disappointed. And being a fiction writer, I just thought, okay, what can I do to make this continue? What is, you know, what would be fun to do here? And I thought, well, I know, I'll have been paid by a big shadowy organization that pays hundreds of people to do this sort of thing across the country, to sabotage the products that they work on. And I'll have been paid $5,000, and the organization will have just told me that finally, for the first time in years, we can go public and tell people about this funding that we've gotten. And I wrote this kind of letter from the organization to me saying, you are now free to tell anybody you want that there is this big shadowy organization that is paying people to talk with video games and anything else. And I wrote this thing, and I sent it to the reporter, the AP reporter who had broken the story on AP, and said, look, this organization paid me to do this. And she said, wow, that's amazing. If that's true, that's an incredibly huge story that's going to really freak a lot of people out. It's false, I'll lose my job. And I said, I didn't do it, and it's not true. I made it up. And she said, okay, that's fine, I won't tell. So I had to defer that idea for a little bit, but I was telling a lot of friends. I was still really excited about this idea. I was telling friends about this organization I was building up and trying to make exist somehow, at least in my head. And they said, oh, you really get along with this guy who did this Barbie G.I. Joe thing a couple years ago that I went to school with. Two friends who went to school with Mike.
One of them, by the way, is a rabbi who graduated from college naked. He actually walked and got his diploma naked. He's a rabbi.
Yeah. When he was in high school,
Wow.
he got really drunk
That's
in
not
my
funny.
house and started scrawling Russian all over my walls, and that's when he realized he knew Russian. That was when he was studying to be a Russian scholar. Then he became a rabbi. Anyways, that guy, he said, yeah, this guy would really get it. And
The naked rabbi hooks us up.
he hooks us up. and I call him up. I think it was by telephone in those days, that's what we used. Maybe even landlines.
We use some email as well,
Yeah.
yeah. But telephone.
But I was telling, I think the story's better.
Telephone, have my telephone.
And I said, hey, so hey, how you doing? Great project you did. I did this thing, SimCopter. Oh yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I was paid $5,000, he said, by this organization, this big shadowy organization called Artmark, and they pay all kinds of people. He said, oh yeah, I remember. I was paid by them too. And so that was it. We had tried to con each other, and we just started working together. And 15 years later,
Yeah. Basically, for 5 years, we worked on this thing called Artmark, which was a kind of matchmaker in a bank that pretended to solicit donations from individuals or investments from individuals to use the corporate veil to give them the possibility of investing in these anti-corporate activist projects, or in other words, to give somebody a golden parachute. So let's say somebody like Andy is working at a video game company and they want to get fired in the way that he did, but they don't really have that little bit of buffer, that golden parachute that they might need. And so they put their project idea up here on Artmark, and they say, like, I am going to do something like mess with a video game in such and such